So I'm going to tell you about The Sandman by Neil Gaiman.
It's a graphic novel.
Graphic novel.
I just like to call them long comic books.
I don't know what the distinction is.
I always thought if it were over than a certain page, it was a graphic novel. But if not, it's a comic book.
I think that's what it is. If it's a graphic novel, it's like a long
comic book. I don't know. I'm sure there's some like educational thing that we're missing here that makes it a graphic novel.
I feel like it's a taboo to call a graphic novel a comic book.
Really? I don't know if I feel that way.
I don't know. It's a comic book.
I think we should call. Well, I don't know why they've become graphic novels. I just think they're glorified comic books.
I think that's like the taboo.
Oh, I'm not supposed to say that it's a glorified. I think, did I just like piss off all of fandom by saying that?
Maybe someone that's sensitive.
I've never actually read a graphic novel. Now I'm going to get hate. Because I think, I don't know, I think I feel so juvenile. I feel like I can't take that seriously as literature. And I know that's wrong.
Yeah.
Don't leave hateful comments. Like, I feel like that's wrong. I know that's wrong. I just feel like as a serious adult reader, I just can't seriously read that.
So I'll tell you the things that I liked about it.
Okay. I've never read any Neil Gaiman, so I'm kind of interested.
The only other graphic novel that I've ever read was maybe like 15 years ago. I read The Watchmen, which was like a real famous book in the 80s.
Oh.
I don't even remember who it was by. They made a movie about it.
I sort of feel like Neil Gaiman is like in the same wheelhouse as George R.R. Martin. You don't get that impression? I must be...
Well, I've never read George R.R. Martin. It's like I guess fantasy, maybe.
Yeah, I guess it's like, yeah.
He did like Coraline. I don't even know if it'll say. I don't mean Neverwhere, American Gods.
Oh, American Gods, okay. Like, I know people who love him. I've just never read him. I'm not crapping on Neil Gaiman.
He has a big...
he has a huge following, doesn't he?
He also has like a wide net. So he does like proper novels.
Yeah.
Comic books, screenplays.
I gotta give the guy credit, man. I mean, that's talent. To be able to write in like so many mediums and have an audience that...
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's great.
The reason that I'm reading it is a friend of mine gave it to me. Thought that I'd like them.
Is that one book in two parts, or are they two separate stories, or is like one part A and the other one part B, or how does that work? Because you have two of them.
There's a long series of these things.
Oh.
I don't even know how many there are. I only read the first 2 volumes.
So they like go together. It's a whole continuing story.
And
okay.
More stuff happens after this, but I don't know.
Okay.
So the first one, volume 1, Preludes and Nocturnes.
Okay.
And they're quick. I mean, this thing maybe took me an hour and a half to read.
See, that's where my problem comes in. I don't know if it takes...
First thing is the artwork is gorgeous. So, I mean, it's really... And it's comic book.
Is it illustrated by somebody, or is it illustrated by him?
So apparently, for each different story, he has different artists.
Oh, that's really neat.
So like the style changes.
Oh, that's kind of neat. Kind of like all of those like Paris, Je t'aime, New York, I love you kind of movies, where it's like the same theme, but it's just told from different people's.
Yeah, exactly.
That's kind of actually really, really interesting.
And
very neat.
He does things like he uses the medium. So there's things that happen in the comic book that is unique. So like
that you couldn't convey in like say a book.
Exactly. So like the way that you move your eye through the page, like the graphic design is composed in a way that like if you're going to spend a lot of time on a page, it looks one way. Sometimes it'll be like one big panel and you're like zipping by it, and you don't necessarily go properly like
left to right,
top to bottom. And it's done in a way that it's like very intuitive. So like each one has a different composition. And,
I see. Yeah,
you just know how to, like, after you start reading it, there's like a flow, and you would just understand like where your eye needs to go. Sometimes it'll go across it'll break the spine and go straight across and then back over.
They're visually stunning.
Yeah, it's gorgeous.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
So
I mean, it doesn't look like something that I would necessarily read, but I can recognize that that is an art form.
There's like a neat thing where like at a certain point, the panels start like turning, and you'll be reading it, and it'll go, and then you'll flip, and then you go like this.
Oh, okay.
And then it'll like, and it's directing you on what to do. It's pretty neat.
That is pretty neat.
So the Sandman is kind of like a superhero, and he's like an immortal being, and he controls the dream world.
Oh, I was going to ask you if it's like the stereotypical, like Mr. Sandman, do.
Yeah, so it's going on like already like well established lore.
Okay. He didn't like make a guy called the Sandman, and it has nothing to do with sleep.
Right.
Okay. Now I've always thought of the Sandman as like this slightly nefarious character. So he's like not all good and not kind of like an
amoral.
Yeah, like the faun. Is the faun always the one who's like?
Is that like half?
Yeah, but like, aren't the fauns in like mythology? Aren't they the ones who are like?
Fish?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So the first one actually I didn't like very much.
Because.
A couple reasons. One is like my own fault. Like I didn't have my expectations kind of tuned in correctly, so I thought it was kind of juvenile.
That's what I would think.
The Sandman character at first is sort of like set up similar to like a monster in a monster movie, where they build up to him and you don't really see him, and it's kind of leading up to like this big reveal, and like all of that part, like there's a family that traps him, takes him out of the dream world. They use like things like magical amulets, and they like trap him, and it goes on, and finally he escapes, and then like you meet him, and like I don't know when I think it was written in like the 80s or 90s. Looks like the Sandman character kind of like has hair of like Edward Scissorhands, looks like a goth, shops at Hot Topic, like maybe has like a band on his, and like I started feeling like a little deflated. He's like cracking jokes, and those are things that are like my fault. Like it's a comic book. These are things that are going to be in a comic book. Like he's a dark character. Like you need to use things that we're already related to convey that. The story itself, like he gets trapped, and then when he escapes, like for him to use his powers, there's like these 3 trinkets that he needs, but they've been stolen from him. So then he has to go off and find his trinkets. So they're like MacGuffins.
It's like Harry Potter and the Horcruxes.
I haven't seen it.
Oh, read it. I have. Clearly.
And like that's the first one, and like.
So he has to like find them in order to be able to go back to where he was.
To become like to become the Sandman, like to have all of his powers.
Ah, it's the opposite of Harry Potter then.
So like he has to go to hell, and he meets like a demon that has like one of his trinkets, and then he like battles him, and the demon goes like, well, I get to pick the battle. And this is sort of like the juvenile part, like so then all of a sudden like it's almost like a Monty Python skit. Like all of a sudden there's like a stage with like curtains, and all these demons are in the audience.
Ladies and gentlemen.
And they challenge each other to a battle of wits, and they have microphones. And yeah, I just thought it was kind of stupid. But moving on, so he ends up getting all of his trinkets, and now he's back to being whoever he wants to do, and that's the end of it. The second one was way better. And again, it's like me. Like, it's just like starting to watch a show that you're totally unfamiliar with, and after like a couple episodes, you start getting invested, and things that maybe turned you off before, or things that you thought you didn't like, you either start forgiving, or you just like learn that you like things that you didn't know. The story was much better. It's like really chaotic. Like there's multiple stories happening at different time periods, and like you never really know what's happening, and then like it'll switch to like another part, and you start like all of a sudden it's a page turner. Like, well, I want to get back to find out where that story was going. But there's several of these things.
So it's kind of like a saga in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like, I actually thought it was interesting reading this after As I Lay Dying, because there's like these perspective shifts.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking of too. Yeah.
And like, since it's like a visual medium, there's so much more information given to the reader that instead of being some kind of chore, you know what's going on.
Right, because you have the visual cue.
Yeah. Different, like the way the text blurbs, bubbles. Like depending on who's talking, it could be written in a different way or being in a different color.
Or the text blob looks different.
Yeah, it'll look different. I thought the story was much better. Neil Gaiman like addressed one of the issues I had with the first one with him looking like an emo character. So it starts off like back in like ancient times.
And there were only Hot Topics.
Well, no, like you find out like it goes through like all different stages of history, and he looks different in all of them.
He just...
So if he's like in ancient times, like he'll have a totally different look, and like depending, so he's like fitting himself in to like whatever fashion. Like, so it made a lot more sense. Like, okay, this is how you look during this time. Like, you look different during Victorian times or the Civil War times or whatever. Like, I thought it was a good way of handling it. Like, it would have been much stranger if he was still in that trench coat.
Yeah.
Like, during, like...
Wearing a great coat, walking around like... Yeah.
So, like, it was just like a little, like, tune-in that, made a lot of sense and made me like the first one a little bit more. I think if I kept reading them, I would like it more and more.
You'd get really into it.
I'd get into it. That being said, like, probably not going to.
You didn't like it that much. You're not that invested.
I liked reading them, but yeah, like if it's not in front of me, I'll probably...
You're not going to go out of your way to seek it out.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, it definitely good. I'm glad I read them. And quick. I mean, you could read both of them in 2 hours. So a lot better than reading a 1,000-page book and finding out you didn't like it.
Yeah, that's true. Although hopefully you would know already.
You gotta wait till the last page.
To decide.
So I think that's good. What do you think?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Comment if you'd like. Thanks for watching. And we're good.